Most people feel it. Something just isn't right. The cracks in the system, soaring debt, the dollar losing value, but what can you do about it? Well, after 10,000 hours of interviews with the world's top financial minds, one truth stands out. Gold has outlasted every crisis, empire collapse, and currency failure in history. That's why I put together my top 10 lessons for safeguarding your wealth, and I want you to have it for free at DannyReport.com. Plus, you'll get ITM's free gold and silver protection guide. Perfect if you're serious about learning how gold and silver can protect your wealth. Get your free copy at DannyReport.com. If you don't quite know how to feel about Elon Musk's Doge agenda and what might come next, my guest today says you're not alone. But in the coming weeks, he's warning we're going to see a dramatic rise of the Doge agenda, culminating in a collapse that will change everything about what it means to live, work, and earn money in America. So please welcome to the show, Rob Spivey. He's the director and co-founder over at Altimetry. It's a firm serving big institutional clients around the world, all 10 of the biggest money managers in the world, including JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Fidelity. Rob, welcome to the show.
Danny, great to be here. Pleasure as always.
Yeah. Look, I read your latest report, and we'll fire in the URL for folks, stockmarketpanic.com. And you had me glued. You had me glued to that paper because I wanted to know everything about what you think of how you see this Doge agenda unfolding and a key date that you're eyeing. Tell us why you think we're going to see a rise in the Doge agenda and why it will eventually collapse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate that it had you spellbound because it's one of those stories that, you know, it's rare that you get to talk to someone that's this impactful across all of everything going on in the economy and in the federal government and everything else. And that's why we felt it was so urgent to talk to people about. When you look at what Doge is really about, and this is the thing that so many people get lost in and being focused on the politics of it and everything else, it's really a far more simple story. It's a story about AI. And it is a story about how what we're seeing and why Elon is doing what he's doing is all about the fact that he wants to be the person to really help reframe the Overton window, that idea of what it's okay for us to talk about in political conversations and in broader conversations about what it makes sense to use AI for and what we can do from a broader basis. And so we talk a lot about this idea of, you know, April 30th is such an important date for us if we frame it out in terms of the Doge agenda of really being able to push this idea of an AI explosion, because the fact that we understand, you know, that first 100 days, which is when basically April 29th, April 30th really gets us to there. That first 100 days are when President Trump has his strongest mandate, and the mandate where Elon can do the most to help enact change. Because the closer and closer and closer we get, I mean, you understand this, Danny, we're on a perpetual cycle of elections, right? Elections are always happening in terms of, you know, and when you get to, it's not 2 years from now that we have to worry about the midterm election. People are going to start to think about it later on this year. So they understand that we need to have this happen fast, which is why we think it's an urgent thing that's happening in the next few weeks, where we think that people are going to really realize the next big thing that Elon's going to do to unlock the power of AI with Doge in the federal government.
Okay, so many questions because we're just, you know, a few weeks shy of April 30th. We don't have many weeks here to prepare for what you see is coming, especially in the stock market. So if you're a retiree, a homeowner, or an investor in the stock market, what should you be doing right now?
Yeah, and this comes, you know, we've spent a lot of time analyzing this idea of what's going on right now, and it's a bigger picture, right, in terms of this AI boom that we have going on right now and the AI adoption cycle that we've had. There have only been a handful of times that really paint this picture just like we have right now in terms of, we think about the internet boom from 94 to 2000. You think about, you know, some of the bigger booms in terms of the PC boom that happened in the early 1980s. And when you see this kind of move happen, it's really important to identify who are going to be the leaders that are going to basically be able to be the companies that are really going to define the issue. And what we thought was so important about right now, and that idea of what Elon's trying to do with the Doge agenda and what he's trying to do to focus in is he's really actually helping dictate who are going to be the winners for the broader AI story with what he's actually trying to enact in the federal government in terms of who are going to be the big hyperscalers that are going to win, who are going to be the big builders of infrastructure that are going to win. But then there's this third part of the idea of what happens in a technology adoption cycle boom like this that's really going on right now, that's going to be accelerated in the next few weeks when he starts to kind of name the names of who he's going to back, which is who are the enablers and the users of AI that are going to start to build product and productize this to really enable people to, quite frankly, actually start to unlock it and enable the federal government to start to unlock it too. And so that's what's so important about us. It's all these names and all these companies that are going to start to be awarded the backing for these type of things that are going to end up being leaders for the broader AI boom is why we think it's so important.
Basically, you're saying, I mean, they're no longer a Magnificent Seven, but a new Mag 7 will be created.
Yeah, and I think that...
Or 8 or 9.
Yeah, Meg 7, Meg 8, Meg 9. We've identified 9 companies that we think are going to be really central to this. And, some of them are names that you've known that you probably would think of as top of mind. And some of them are names that you would never actually have even known existed. But what's going to happen here, which is important, is it's going to be in companies big and small that are going to be part of this transformation. And we've, as you said, Danny, we've identified 9 that we think are really, really important to this transition that we've basically put together in this important special report. And it's that idea of it's not just those 7 who you think of. There's a whole lot of other companies behind this. And some of them are going to be smaller companies that you'll definitely never have heard of before that are going to be transformational. Just like, by the way, what happened in the 1990s, where names that you had never heard of basically became some of the biggest, most important companies in the world.
And you think these are the companies that Elon's going to point to based on your research?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we were saying. So when you think about what he's going to do, these 9 are 9 companies that when we look are companies that he's going to have to lean on. These are companies that run the gamut from they have close relationships to the government that you might not realize how close they are, to these are the kind of companies that anyone is going to have to lean on for the tech solutions, to when we start getting into the weeds about what the government does and why the Overton window shift and the change in conversation that he's pushing is so important. You look at it and there's something like 84% of all of government work is really mundane automatable tasks. And so much of it's stuff like customer service, where basically you're just making sure that people are getting the information that they need. All that stuff that AI can manually can automate and AI can handle. And that these are the companies that we've identified in terms of these 9 companies we're focusing on are the exact kind of companies that he and the government are going to have to lean on to do that.
And before, the folks are going to be like, what are these 9 companies? Hence why you need to go to stockmarketpanic.com and get Rob's research. But bigger picture here, Rob, you're hitting a question, because just last week I was speaking to my husband. I think it's when they were doing the whole Tesla show on the White House lawn, and we're looking at, 9 consecutive weeks of total destruction to the Tesla stock. I mean, it's a little up today as we're speaking, but overall, the stock's taken a beating. Right? You have the richest man on earth. You have Tesla dealerships blowing up, people keying Teslas. This was his baby. We were like, why would he take this on? Why would he take on tackling bureaucratic waste, as you say? You have also been studying him for over a decade, and you say the game plan is easy. So it's really for you. Are you saying he doesn't really care about tackling the bureaucratic waste, that he feels he's just going to make gazillions in the AI space? What's the bigger picture for Elon?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. When we talk about that, his plan, we call it his algorithm because it really is. When you study, and he's played out with this algorithm when he took over Twitter and rebranded X now. He's done it in Tesla. He's done it at SpaceX. And there's 5 simple steps, right? The first step is he says, question every requirement. So he basically says, let's step back on what we're doing and ask, why are we doing what we're doing? And is it the right thing to do? The second thing that he says is, let's delete any part or process we can. Right? In terms of, let's say, hey, okay, now that we've questioned every part of the process, and this is when you see him storming into USAID or storming into the Department of Education or the Department of Treasury, a lot of what he's doing is, right, yeah, they're uncomfortable questions to ask for people because this is how we've done them all along, but he's basically saying, is this the right way to do it? And okay, actually, maybe we don't need to do that step, right? Maybe for the Department of Treasury, maybe we can roll out GSAI, which is this solution that can analyze these big data sets for us instead of us having to have, do this mundane work ourselves. Then the third step is he says, let's simplify and optimize. Right. Let's really basically thin down everything that we do so we can have the most streamlined process. And then the fourth is accelerate the time cycle. Right. This is when you think about that idea of the first 100 days and how he's trying to rush through this. It's the faster we do this, the more rapid we can make change happen, because, and this comes to the idea of bureaucracy, the moment you slow down, right, is the moment that then everything that can tell you the reason why to say no can creep up on you. And you only get this window once, which is the fifth step, which is automate. Right. And so those are the 5 steps of his process. And if you look at it, Danny, and you ask, wow, how this has trashed his wealth at Tesla and everything else, what is going on? And the thing is this is the whole entire idea of what Elon's goal is. He recognizes there are very specific windows that happen for any big technology transformation where you have the opportunity to be at the heart of it, or you have the opportunity to be at the peripheral. And if you're at the heart of it, you can really dictate so much of what's going on. And that's what his goal is. There's a reason why before he kicked off this process and started backing Trump, he built Colossus, right? Which is his massive AI data center solution in Memphis that consumes, I think, more energy than like 300,000 homes or something like that. And when you look at it, he basically built this data center, which is really meant to be the most robust AI training data center in the world, in something like a third of a year, when most people, right, if you talk about Jetsuan or anybody at NVIDIA, this would take most people 3 years to do. And he did it in less than a third of a year because he said, I need to get this set up now so that I can be right where I need to be at the forefront of dictating this, because this is a transformational technology. And so you look at it, you really think that that's what's going on in terms of what he's trying to do. He's saying, I need to be at the heart of this. So one, I can dictate it for everybody. And two, obviously, right, so I can set myself up to profit on it also.
I think it's interesting, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense. My question is, you think he's willing to do this, the bigger picture, even if it means running Tesla into the ground?
Well, I think if you look at what's going on with Tesla, I'd argue that there's a different view of that, which is, you leverage what you've built before to build what you're going to build next, right? And so I think that, if you think about where Tesla is, Tesla is, at the end of the day, if you want to talk about making cars or making batteries, most things, those are, at the end of the day, commodity businesses, right? And so I think for Elon, he's looking at, hey, this is a once in a generation opportunity for me to leverage this car company that I've built, and this battery company that I've built, and solar panel company that I've built, by the way, also commodity business, and be able to transform that into basically something that can be otherwise actually transformational and wealth building and enforcing itself too. So I think that he's looking at his broader portfolio of companies, because people get so focused on Tesla, but don't forget, Elon isn't just Tesla, right? He's done Tesla. He's got the Boring Company.
Absolutely.
He's got XAI. He's got Twitter. He's got SpaceX. And you look at the portfolio of what he's doing. The portfolio of what he's doing is actually going in the right direction, whether or not the one that's the only one that people can actually see the price on every single day, Tesla, is going up or down. And I think that's the broader picture if you look at it from his wealth, along with the fact that he really wants to make sure that AI is going in the right direction and he's helping steer it.
Yep. Just taking a step back, I have more questions on AI. But leading up to April 30th, what kind of wild swings are you expecting to see in the stock market? Because I know in the report you were saying, we ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, right? I mean, and right, change is uncomfortable. And, there's analogies to what we're seeing today and actually what happened, funny enough, in the late 1990s. When you talk about President Trump's speech in front of Congress in a few weeks ago, where that really started this market rollover, it actually has really weird analogies that are going to make people on both sides of the aisle uncomfortable, but I'll just say it, to Clinton's State of the Union in 1997, when he talked about things like balancing the budget and cutting costs and laying people off. He talked about things like, let's actually reform social networks and everything else. So what's happening, and that created that kicked off a 15% drawdown in the market. 13% was actually what the lowest end of day close was, but it got lower. And you look at what we're seeing here, we're going to see a lot of volatility happen as people try to figure out what it is that Elon and President Trump are doing. When we talk about this idea of a collapse, when we talk about a collapse, what we're really talking about is we see a collapse coming in what's going to happen in the federal government, a collapse in how government operations work, and a simplification and this big collapse that's going to create a lot of uncertainty, but really actually create a lot of opportunity and upside for investors who are backing the right companies, who are the ones who Elon's going to lean on to be able to kick all this off.
You mentioned that AI will be involved in everything and used for everything the government is working on. So passports one day, no more filing stuff online or waiting in line to get your driver's license renewed. Is this something you welcome personally, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it,
no more DMV.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. When you think about it, first off, it means stuff is going to happen a lot faster. And this is not, anybody who's had experience working with legacy Google chatbot help, right? Who goes, why on earth would I want to do that? That's not what this is, right? This is, the literal idea of right now, people are having conversation with AIs that don't even realize it. AI can actually help us get things faster than the old bureaucratic process. So personally, yes, I look forward to it because it means a lot more efficiencies that are going to come out of the system and a lot more things just happening actually organically and naturally, as opposed to, let's push this sheet of paper. I mean, literally, I don't know if you know this, we were running a process where the process of actually letting somebody go from the federal government required you filing paperwork in a basically in an old salt mine in Pennsylvania or something, and basically required multiple different sheets of paper and everything for something that should have just been a button click that an AI could handle all filing all the paperwork for you. You look at all the inefficiencies that we have in the system, and there's a lot of places that, quite frankly, I think it's appealing that we'll get more efficient.
Just one more point, and I know it's a loaded question, but for people watching who are currently in the Mag 7, right? If everything you say pans out, so if you take a company like NVIDIA, right? What should an investor be doing now?
Yeah, I mean,
what do you do with it?
Yeah, right. And this comes to the important thing is I wouldn't say that, we're saying that the Mag 7 needs to crash, because the fact that there is a fundamental tech adoption cycle happening here that they are benefiting from. But the point is, when you talk about an NVIDIA or you talk about a Amazon or some of the biggest winners so far, it's not that those companies have to be the biggest winners for the rest of the duration. They are going to participate, absolutely. But what we're saying is this next generation of companies are going to be the ones that are really going to actually put it to work and have the federal government spending behind them, but also the willingness for other people to work with them that the federal government being behind them unlocks means it's not so much an either or. It's a, look, those have been great parts of your portfolio, but you might want to really make sure to think about these ones, because just like that run that happened in the Mag 7 for the last 2 years, these companies could be the next generation of them. And if you missed out on the Mag 7 because of the fact that you were unconvinced about AI, recognize this next Mag 9, if you will, the 9 companies that we've identified, they're the kind of companies that could have that kind of run also. That would be the kind of companies that we'd say to pay attention to for the next step in the AI boom.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about news that came out today that RFK looking to stop big pharma ads on television. We were having a good chat about this offline. I mean, who would it really kill? The pharmaceutical companies or legacy media that relies on these ads to survive right now? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think, it's a really interesting take in terms of thinking about the ad component and what it means for legacy media. And there's entirely possible. We all know that the score is that certainly President Trump feels the need to settle with legacy media. I think that there's actually a different side of this coin. It's something that we've actually talked to clients about, and also that we've wrote about a couple times, which is really actually about the relationship that pharma has with consumers. And the whole entire idea of when you look in the US, the average US consumer spends 3 times as much on any given drug that they take than consumers in the rest of the world do. Effectively, the way that the relationship between pharma and the US and the rest of the world works right now, right, just for context, right, I think it's 2/3 of total spend revenue for big pharma, top 10 pharma companies, comes from the US. The U.S. is not 2/3 of global prescriptions, let alone 2/3 of global population. And what's happening is the U.S. just fundamentally pays more for everything because we underwrite the R&D, and the rest of the world basically pays for just purely production alone. And that's relationships that happen. And I think that what the administration is trying to do, possibly, is to say, hey, the only way for us to break that relationship and make it so we can have a negotiation on price that isn't being reacted to from people thinking this is a consumer good as opposed to it's supposed to be about a health outcome, is if we break that relationship that pharma has directly with consumers. And that's probably part of what's being pushed to be able to, how do we re-level, right? Part of it's make America healthy again. But if you think about, right, some of the biggest spend that we have in terms of spending that we have in the US, when we talk about 20% of our GDP being spent on healthcare and a huge part of our entitlements, Medicare and Medicaid and VA, is all actually driven by pharma. I think pharma has something like a 40 to 50% profit capture in the United States. So of all healthcare profits in the US, like 40 or 50% of it, I forget what the exact number is, comes from pharma. And I think that a lot of this is about how do we change that math? Because that also, when you think about cutting government spending, helps us. And also when you think about re-leveling the playing field competitively, which is very much a focus for this administration across the world, also helps us. So I think that there's a lot that's going on there, while the media side of it absolutely might be relevant too.
Rob, thoroughly appreciate your thoughts. For folks interested to read more of Rob's work and to know the stocks he's eyeing, check out stockmarketpanic.com. Again, it's stockmarketpanic.com. I'm going to be watching the weeks leading up to April 30th, and let's see what unfolds, Rob.
Danny, thanks so much, and appreciate the time on your show, and appreciate the opportunity to get to tell everybody about this very big issue that we think is coming on.
All right, Rob Spivey, stockmarketpanic.com. And we'll see you all soon. Be sure to stay tuned to the Daniela Cambone show here on ITM Trading. Sign up at danielacambone.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of it all. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.